tuning into the Builders Podcast, Singapore, Rooftop Terrace Edition. I mean, look at this view. It's awesome. We're really excited to be chatting today. We have Ali from the Flow Foundation, and we have the Hackquest team here. And so we're super excited to kind of get into what is going on with builders today. What are some of the pain points of the builders today? How are we improving on that stuff? How is Hackquest being a part of that? How is Flow being a part of that? And I think we're going to have a really fun conversation. So thank you all for being here. Let me just kick it off to the Hackquest team. Maybe go to Cameron first so you can introduce yourself, and we'll go across the line.
Yep. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. My name is Cameron. I'm a co-founder of Hackquest and mainly lead product and operation. Yep.
Hi, all. My name is Harry, one of the co-founders of Hackquest. I primarily focus on BD, growth, marketing, all that fun stuff.
The whole shebang. My name is Ali. I'm an outbound product manager at the Flow Foundation, and some of the things I work on are developer education, developer tooling, and the whole strategy for developer engagement and growth.
Awesome. Well, and I'm Matt. I'm on the community team here at the Flow Foundation. So, I just vibe around the internet. It's a great time. But this is awesome. So and we've spoken a little bit previous to this podcast. Seems like what you guys are doing is really exciting. So I want to kind of let our audience get to know a little bit about what you're doing and some of the builders who we're going to be encountering over our world tour. So we've started this world tour. This is stop number 1 here in Singapore. It's a great first stop, I might add.
Absolutely.
In just a couple of days, we'll be kind of activating at the ETH Global Hackathon. We'll be hacking on DeFi and consumer DeFi. So really excited to kind of get into that. But so people know kind of, we'll give a little bit of backstory and Flow in a moment, but to get to know you a little bit better, Harry, do you want to tell us a little bit about what is Hackquest?
Sure. I'll get us started. So Hackquest started as a founders community back in 21, and we just started to host a lot of Web3 hackathons because after exiting our previous 2 startups, so our team has been together since 2016, and gradually after exiting the previous startup, we're looking for the next big problem to solve. So we started actually as a founders community for emerging technology. We hosted a lot of hackathons. We hosted a lot of huddles and a lot of meetups, and just to getting to know each other, good vibes. And one thing we noticed around 21, 22 is 60% of our builders in the community are interested in Web3. And we're no strangers to Web3 because we actually got into Web3 by one of my first essays ever written was on blockchain back in 2014, and our CTO is a PhD in cryptography, and Kevin Cam has been trading crypto since forever ago. So we've all been on the borderline crypto for years, and so we were very interested in the technology side of blockchain and how that affects our everyday lives. And of course, our focus has always been on education. And another thing is all 4 of us come from relatively more technical background. I'm the least technical on the team. I come from a data science statistics kind of more the teaching portion of that background. And then the 3 of them are hardcore, more programming, comp sci background. And we noticed that a lot of these founders and developers we're working with in Web3, there's just not many of them. When we're in events, it's the same people. It's the same group of people having fun. And in 22, we came across this report, authored by Electric Capital, Maria, and who we had the opportunity to invite to our events. And speaking, we had a chance to talk several more times. But one data point really caught our attention was the discrepancy between the Web 2 and Web 3 developers. We did a little bit of math there. So right now we have about 28.7 million Web 2 developers, or developers in general, right? But if we look at the open source developer count in Web 3, albeit it's open source, just to highlight that, we have roughly 26,000 monthly active and 7,661 full-time.
Wow.
And that number, again, is closed source, so it's open source. So if we even put a 5x or 10x on top of that, that's still, a 5-figure.
We're still a couple zeros short.
We are still a couple zeros short. We're still 1,000x behind. So whenever we see 1,000x opportunity and gap, and how much we invested in the decentralized future, we recognize the space needs more builders, needs more developers, needs more technical founders, needs folks who understand the theoretical reasons why we're building in this space. And that's why we're doing this, is we're hoping to onboard more developers to Web3. So Hackquest, again, the direct answer is Hackquest is a Web3 developer education platform. We help leading blockchains to space to get more developers and founders to build on them. We do that through education, through events, hackathons, hacker houses, accelerator. So the whole pipeline of growth and onboarding.
What was you mentioned that you got your start in just kind of community building and
Correct. Yeah.
emerging, not emergency, but emerging technologies. Like, what was the desire to start building community in that sphere to begin with?
Yeah, I mean, it's so exciting, right, to meet folks who are young and energetic and passionate about new things and innovative things that change our everyday lives, right? Like AI, like Web3, like blockchain in general, Internet of Things, that it just excites you. I think naturally these people you get when smart people and ambitious people, right, gather together, great things happen. So at that time, a quick segue as well, but there were people were building human interfacing computers and building rocket material samples that I have no idea what those are, biotech materials, and there was a lot of engineers and scientists that gather in a basement and gather in some fancier spots too, and just build crazy stuff together and days and nights. And when that happened, things happen, right? So you see the innovation, you see the energy, and it just excites you. And that's why we were super glad, Hackquest was born from this movement in a way.
That's awesome.
What are some of your biggest learnings about starting a community? Because I think one unique thing about Web3 is almost like, unlike any other industry, almost every single product has an inbuilt mechanism and system of creating a community around it. Almost every project that launches, from a tiny meme coin to a large-scale DeFi protocol to an L1 blockchain, will have its own Discord community server, right? You don't see that in Web 2. You don't see that direct engagement and fostering of communities around your application. So I guess from your own experiences, as well as what you've seen, what are some of the ingredients you've seen in building communities in the space? What leads to successful communities? And do you have any advice or insights around those?
Absolutely. I can kick that off. I think Cam has been building a ton of communities in Asia too, so I feel like there's a lot we can add. Where do we begin? I think number one is set up so I saw this chart, right, talking about what is a community and what is just a group of people, right? And so when you think about a group of people hanging out or really a lot of the organizations are set up, it's a one-way communication. What is a community? A community is you support each other. It's a both-way communication. So it's almost like the difference between Web 1 and Web 2, right? So you have the one-sided communication, the folks just patiently and passively receiving information, while a community is you don't necessarily have to be there to lead, to organize things, to initiate conversation, or to even address them proactively, albeit those things absolutely help. The folks themselves will start to organize things organically. So that's, to us, is almost the end stage of or what a good community really is, and is one of the key ingredients to set up the mechanism that encourages such behavior. So I think there's a couple of things there. One is allowing some type of almost promotional or spotlighting mechanism, so a direct path for recognition. It doesn't have to be anything monetary or so to speak. It can be just recognition for them in the sense of a badge, in the sense of a shout out, a podcast interview, a Twitter space shout out, a blog article. I think that's a very key ingredient, is that communal, that cult-like, organic bonding and the community building energy there. So that's a key ingredient. Another key ingredient, from my point of view, I think for a good community, really comes down to the people who are contributing, right? So who you're contributing, you may call that the vibe, but also I kind of like to describe it almost like the energy that you bring, the passion you bring to that ecosystem. So I was talking to a lot of DevRels and founders of these other protocols and developer-focused organization, and the number one thing they say about marketing or DevRel is word of mouth. So, I mean, when you think about the key figures in these communities, you always find these one or two key influence folks who are very energetic. When I think about these folks, I think about like the Patrick Collins, the Nader, the Austin Griffith of the world, who are, I'm obviously talking more developer, but they're really amazing folks who bring the energy to that ecosystem, to that community, that encourage people to contribute, want people to learn. They get excited just by learning. Right, they don't come just for the money or for career. They come because they're curious what they can build with this technology by learning this language. Those are two very important ingredients. I think third is probably more around having I call this high frequent. It could be relatively low touch points, omni-channel engagement when I write proposal, but it really is just be consistent.
Yeah.
When doing things. It doesn't even have to be events. It can just be, be consistent in posting, be consistent having initiatives, be consistent about hosting virtual or offline events, saying hi on Telegram, saying GM on Telegram. It's just about being consistent, being present to the community, being a builder. And if we see that everywhere, not just initiated by the group, right? Like coming back to that point, if the members themselves are organically doing that, that means a community is formed and it's probably going to last for a minute. So for me, those are the three things.
Yeah, I totally second that. And I think I want to add some personal stories. So I think for us, communities like our community is very special in that it's a dev community. And also a lot of people like in our community actually just recently got into Web3 from Web2. So it's a community at first to them is very like strange and new things. Like they don't probably just get into it and understand it first, because like in our community, like any builder can set up a time and book a time of mine or Harry or anyone and talk to us. And we'll just talk to them, what are you trying to build and what things have you built before? And let's see how we can improve that, how we can help you. And they are very like cautious at first, like, why would you help me? What do you want from me? So, but
How much
after
equity
like,
are you taking in that?
yeah, so it's all, yeah. So and after like doing this for months and even years, and they just you set up this like kind of a vibe for community to help each other, and they get to know each other. They know that you're not here for their whatever monetary value or to get them to anything. And I think that's where the vibe of community actually grows. And then we just need to initiate that and to keep that kind of a good vibe up. I think that's very important. And another thing I think is that to keep, especially for dev community, I think it's very important to keep a long-term kind of point of view and to make the community very pure, because we know that a lot of communities, especially like they talk about tokens, price and anything. But in our community, I think our devs like they always talk about the things they're gonna build. They share like mostly technical kind of conversations. So we really want to kind of put those, kind of like fancy and, those noise out for our community. So I think that's another thing, two things I want to add up.
I absolutely love that definition of sharing resources, and I love the point on consistency. Like, even outside of Web3, like, the most genuine aspects of community that like I've experienced is people sharing food with you, sharing resources, eating together, people sharing like when you're going through a tough time, like, oh, here's some medicine. Like my friend like came to my apartment last month when I was super sick, like without prompting, just showed up with a bag of groceries and fruits. And it's a real friend. And they were sharing resources, and I felt that genuine sense of like friendship, like bonding, community. And I was like, you know what, this is a true friend. And then when they got sick, the exact same thing. I mean, they got sick from coming to visit me, of course. So a week later, I returned the favor. But yeah, it's interesting because in a lot of ways, Web3 is uniquely situated for that sharing, especially when it comes to the developer angle, because all the code that you deploy on chain is inherently open source.
Yep.
It's inherently shareable. And building on your point earlier, it's like when you go into these Discord channels, a lot of the times people think, oh, I'm just going to create a Discord server and I'm going to create a GM channel and then a bunch of rules and a MESIG spot and then a bunch of rules and then that's community. But that's not it.
Yep.
Like from what you guys are saying, it's a two-way bi-directional relationship.
Right.
You need to, when you're creating these channels and these communities, think about how do you create opportunities for those people to get involved. Maybe you're making a video game. Is there a way that people could contribute ideas? Is there a way for you to get product feedback? Is there a way for them to get involved in maybe voice acting for characters, right? Like, how can you structure the community from the beginning to create as many opportunities as possible for people to get involved, invested in the future of that? I think that's absolutely amazing. I think that's tied into another point, and I want to segue a little bit more. If we define like healthy communities as those that foster sharing of resources, it kind of seems like unhealthy communities are those that are one-sided and like don't share, and those are more toxic. What do unhealthy hackers and developers look like? What do very healthy builders look like that end up becoming, founders or contributing and growing? Is there any synergies there? Like, what have you seen, like working with all these developers yourselves?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And to be frank, I don't know if healthy unhealthy is the best word for it, but I totally get your point. We talk about, we almost label them as two personas in our when we talk to a lot of very developer focused protocol, some recognize it immediately. That's why we know, oh, they felt it too. They've been investing in developers, so they know they're two personas, right? So we've been so Hackquest has been started in the Greater China area. We've been tapping everywhere in India, in Brazil, in Nigeria, different parts of Southeast Asia, of course, and US and elsewhere. So we've been seeing a trend globally is a lot of developer ecosystems wants the numbers to really go up, right? And then that's one side, and they also want quality projects. That's second request, and that's been a trend among, which makes sense because you got to have enough builders in this space. You also got to have a lot of good projects in this space. But to be frank, those are two different personas because some magically think, oh, and it's true, it is a funnel, right? In some ways, the more developers you have, the more quality projects you have, the more quality devs you have, and maybe a lot of them will convert into founders, and the founders become better founders, they raise money, they become pillar projects. That does make sense to some extent, but something we have noticed is that there are this two persona of one is the developer type, who may never want to be a founder. And right, just like we talk about, like, and that's okay. I think a lot of them, they are amazing hackathon winners to some extent. We personally have hosted a few hacker houses where out of, a couple thousand people, you have 10 founders. These are serial 5 times, 10 times hackathon winners that have been building in the space for years. Yep. They are working at all these incredible protocols as engineers, and they have great business ideas. Their hackathon projects, sometimes I'm jealous, like, wow, these people are so amazing that they have these ideas all the time. They build like 5 hackathon projects in the span of one hackathon. And I was like, if it's me, I can probably think of some good ways to commercialize each one of them if they want me to, if they would like me to support. But some of them don't want to take it to the next level. And they want to be a contributor to some other protocols, and that's okay. But that's one builder type. There's actually a lot of folks who are like that, who is more the builder, the developer type. And then you have the founder type. Don't get me wrong, I can definitely see a lot of the developer, the builder type to transition into the founder, and most of us came that way. But again, some folks just naturally, and maybe they come from a Web2 founder background, so naturally they tend to want to start a Web3 company as a founder as opposed to joining one and then start one. But for a lot of actually some very native folks, they never been a founder before. So they start as a builder, they stay as a builder. They're missing that tick or that tool or that push to become a founder. That's also something we are very, very interested. I know Flo has been very invested in that process too. I'd love to chat more. But yeah, let me elaborate and finish this part of my thinking. So the second persona is that founder. And again, some come from Web2, some just naturally have that urge. And they have a vision or problem they want to solve. And those are the people we try to capture as early as possible to give them the support they need, whether it's funding, whether it's idea generation, whether it's what Cam was saying about just jumping on a 15-30 minute call to jam on some ways we can help, to share resources, invite them to communities of different sizes, and just be helpful in general. So I think those two persona, if we are really boiling down which is better for the ecosystem, I think in some ways a chicken and egg problem, right? So you gotta have both. You gotta need the founders to drive actual meaningful use cases to onboard the users, which we're also still lacking. And then you need the developers to sustain those protocols, right? I know there's a very famous saying in Silicon Valley. You have some founder, the structure starter, and then you have the maintainer type. You need both archetypes for a healthy ecosystem to be formed. But to be honest, I think we're missing both right now in the space, and that's exactly the reason why we exist today.
Well, and maybe there's a piece too to the power of community, in that a lot of times, you're scrolling Twitter, you're seeing people launching these projects and products, and it seems like they came out of nowhere, and now they have 50 million TVL, and oh my gosh, they're so successful, it's incredible.
Right.
And it's like, I don't know how to even take the first step to get to that point, if that makes sense. But being in a community, you can see people progress and be like, oh, that person who I joined this community with, they were a hacker just like me at a hackathon. Now they have their own project, their own product, and it's successful. And I watch them do it. Maybe that makes me think maybe I can do that too, right? And that's where I think we're talking about how to kind of recognize your builders, how to empower your builders, and that's something that we're keenly focused here on Flow with our new rewards program coming up, right? And I think this is something that I've been thinking about a lot, is how do we align those incentives between protocols, builders, and users, right? And not only just align those incentives, but empower them, right? Make them feel recognized, be part of a community, give them a platform in which they can elevate themselves and be recognized and rewarded for doing so. So Ali, do you have any thoughts about how does our rewards program kind of fit into that and help foster maybe that community that you were talking about?
Exactly. So a little bit of context. The Flow blockchain, it's played a very pivotal role in the evolution of the Web3 industry as a whole. Our chief architect and co-founder of Flow is the one who invented the word NFT. Came out of Dapper Labs originally, the Flow blockchain, where the team behind CryptoKitties, which is a household staple in Web3, everyone knows about it, they launched Cats on Chain. All of a sudden, all these regular people were like, oh my God, these are so cool. They're fun. I could breed them. I could get more.
Absolutely.
This is a fun activity, right? And all of a sudden, people were breeding Cats on Chain like crazy. And people were like, was this a use case any of us expected? And of course, this was before DeFi and all that stuff. And we realized through that there was a massive scalability problem on Ethereum. And so, the inception of the Flow blockchain really came from how can we create tooling and an environment for builders to overcome all the barriers that they face when trying to build Web3 applications, right? And from a scalability perspective, we thought about creating a multi-role architecture that allows scalability without sharding. We also thought about okay, how do we improve user experience? Your mother, your uncle, your aunt, if you send them a link to an application, whether it's DeFi or even send your friend a game, all right? The first thing that they see when they try to join you in that game, the top right corner is connect wallet. It's what the heck is that? All right, I'm gonna click that. Okay, I have to memorize all these seed phrase. Oh, it says don't save it to notes. I was just about to save it to notes. I have to write them down.
I already screenshotted it.
But save it somewhere safe, because if it's on paper, it could burn down. You're like, okay, shoot. And then
so real.
Yeah, and then after that, you try to log in. You're not able to do anything because you don't have any gas. You're like, what's gas? Is that taxes? All right, where do I get that from? Your friend says, oh, go to this exchange. You go on. Your bank blacklists it. You get on a call with fraud department for hours. It's been a day before you even play that game, right? There's so many barriers to that, and a lot of the value propositions of Web3, true ownership, being able to have the privacy that you deserve, the ethos around it, that can be maintained while also improving the user experience of developers using those apps. So that's kind of the mindset we've had with Flow, and creating these protocol level primitives account abstraction at the protocol level, so you could create walletless applications easier. And as the users go further down the rabbit hole, they could get full ownership of any assets that they got while playing around with these applications. They just put in their email, they're able to use them, and then as they grow, they could connect them to their own non-custodial wallet, right? And then same thing with gasless experiences. We created a transaction model that separates the payer from the authorizer to the proposer, and that opens up a lot of potential for proposing transactions where the application will pay for those and everything sponsored. So as an end user, you could go, no transaction fees, no complicated account setup, but all the benefits of Web3. That's just at a very high level. And over the last several years, we've worked with some of the leading IPs and brands in the world. We've worked with Disney and Disney Pinnacle. We worked with NBA Top Shot. And you could think of this as a kind of tinkering to really test out our vision for a fully scalable and top tier UX ecosystem.
Right.
And what we've seen is applications like NBA Top Shot, which is another example of millions of people around the world that were not in the Web3 ecosystem. They didn't go down that rabbit hole.
Right.
They started buying these moments. They started utilizing these digital collectibles that were built on top of a blockchain. But more importantly, it proved that if you remove those barriers, those user experience barriers, you can bring millions of mainstream users into applications that benefit everyone, right? So what we've done up until now is we've worked with leading brands. We've NBA Top Shot on some days had more transactions than all of Ethereum. We've proven that you can create scalable apps. We've removed a lot of those barriers. What we did earlier this month was we launched Crescendo. And what Crescendo is the largest upgrade that's ever happened on our blockchain. One of the key features it does, on one side, it adds a bunch more user experience to the native programming language environment. We also add some cool stuff like attachments, which you could think of like modding for smart contracts. But on the other side, we've essentially implemented EVM equivalents. What that means is any EVM developer can take their Solidity code, can use their favorite tools, instantly deploy on Flow without any configuration in seconds. That tears down the barrier on the other side of the equation for the 90% plus of developers in the ecosystem that are familiar with the EVM tool stack. And in the last several weeks, we've seen a lot of exciting growth. We've seen several thousand contracts get deployed on our testnet for EVM. We've been getting tons of messages of people wanting to get launched, and tying that all together with the rewards platform. There's massive amounts of communities and users that are mainstream users. There's an ecosystem that's scalable. Now there's a way for everyday Solidity developers to start building applications that can access those IPs, those assets, those communities. Those on the Cadence side, they could also access all the TVL coming in from the Solidity side and EVM side. Now, the rewards platform, the whole idea of it is there's two sides of it. One is the user side. So as a user, we're starting off with the ability for you to essentially lock in Flow in the ecosystem, and you get points from that, et cetera. And so already within a very short amount of time, weeks, we've seen almost 25 million in Flow get locked into this. So a massive amount of TVL is building up where users are going to be able to then allocate it or directly engage with all these different exciting projects that are launching in the ecosystem and get some very exciting rewards or incentives in place by just using mainstream consumer applications that are being launched right now and that will be launched in the future. On the other side of the rewards platform is from an acquisition, activation, retention, and referral mechanism, how could we seamlessly support developers at every stage, meeting them where they're at, whether they're a hacker in a university, whether they're a developer that is looking to make open source contributions and test out new technologies, whether they're someone who wants to think about starting their next startup, whether you're in university working on a side project. We're creating a system where the more active you are in shipping and the more impactful your projects are on chain, i.e. the more product market fit they have, they're solving a real problem, people want to use those applications, you unlock a whole plethora of rewards and perks and opportunities. I'm not sure how much I can get into that, but long story short, They're awesome. You'll see a lot more of that coming out in the coming weeks, but at a high level right now, if you're a developer, if you're joining us on this world tour, we're going to 4 different cities. We're also going to have an online version. If you're hacking and building something, I don't want you to think that like, oh, this is just a weekend project. What you're building now is going to be tied into a much larger system that if you continue working on what you originally started in the hackathon, or you start something completely different, you're going to get multi-tiered support to create something that can make a real difference in the world, that can really help everyday people, not this small niche of degens that have already went down the rabbit hole, but everyday people that want what Web3 has to offer.
That's so exciting. Yeah. So disclaimer, I do not know what the product is, so I'm going to say what I think is going to be so important. But one thing we've been always thinking over the past few years of building in the space is, and I know Vitalik wrote this blog like years ago, and he refreshed it every 5 years as the top most difficult problems to solve in the space. And one that always been marked as barely moved or hardest to solve is the reputation layer. And that's something that really excites us as well, especially as it connects to the developer side, is the developer reputation layer. Is how does that connect to everything they're doing, their shipping, and they deserve to be recognized a lot more, right? We were chatting just earlier about how much, to be frank, I think this is not a cycle for the real builders or the technical devs who are shipping all the time, because it's difficult to be a builder in this cycle where there's so much distractions going on, and you just every day you're building your hands on days and nights, but you're not necessarily getting the fair distribution of resources and support and recognition for everything that's been going on. So it really excites me and the team, and love to hear from Cam's point of view too. But I really think there's something like that can track right automatically at a very scalable level of something they are doing and shipping, and that just is what Web3 needs, right? And that's what the space's ethos is about, is to giving them the fair distribution of the resources they need and the recognition they deserve, and to get them the support they can to achieve their dreams. So if something like that, does happen, I would love to check it out. So come me in at least.
Well, and I think more kind of broadly, like we've all kind of grown up in the age where the iOS, Android App Store, where we use it the most. Builders, it's once again this kind of like obscure like process, like getting into the App Store, and then once you're lucky enough to be admitted to the App Store, you have to pay 30% tax for all of your transactions, right? And so I think this is the thing that Web3, we've kind of intuitively known that participation is rewarded in Web3. That's kind of the like a core tenet, if you will. And so I get the sense that this kind of decentralized app store, this rewards program that we're working on, is kind of a fulfillment of that promise. Like if you're a builder, you get rewarded. If you're a user, you get rewarded. Like, and those should be intertwined, right? And we talk about community, that every product seems to have a community. I mean, shoot, Pump Fun has a chat built in. You know what I mean? Like it is this kind of core feature, and so I just think that this kind of new distribution strategy and platform is going to be really, really interesting and really exciting to see kind of what things emerge as a result of that. I think we've seen a few people kind of take a crack at this. How do we align incentives between builders and users, right? And I think we've improved on a lot of that.
That's amazing.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think this perfectly coincides with what we are trying to do with builders, because like as we all mentioned, that it's very difficult sometimes to transfer from a builder to a founder. Right. And I think this really helps because like I think one good thing about Web3 is that as a builder, you can actually get positive feedback every step of the way. So, for example, right now, I think the main kind of way to do it is through hackathons. You participate hackathons, you get rewards, and then when you get enough rewards, you seem to like think like, oh, it's really a good project that I should perhaps build more, perhaps put more time, and even like become a founder and do it full time. And I think with this reward system, I think if we could really track, not just like through like hackathons are like distinct like points where you have this milestone and then the next hackathon. But right now, if we have a reward system that can track from what they are building like every day, and then the tractions they grow as their app. So I think it will be super helpful for builders to establish this positive feedback loop.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I think, we've seen things. You mentioned kind of there was some statistic, X amount of builders is probably going to become a founder, right? And I think there's an element to almost shots on goal. Like, how many shots on goal do you take to hit product market fit? Hackathons are a great place to do that. But I think there has been a little bit of a disconnect, at least from what I've seen kind of on the outside looking in. It's like, yeah, people have 5 to 10 great ideas per hackathon. Any of them could potentially become a business, but they don't kind of cross the Rubicon in that way. And so I think distribution could be an answer to that, and something that's a little more persistent. Some people have kind of taken a crack at persistent hackathons, like have long-lasting online hackathons, but even that is, hey, submit your project and then get some kind of grant, some kind of reward for that. This is something a little bit different in the way that, hey, start building in a hackathon. You're already going to be there. And then on the tail end of that, submit your project. Let's grow this and let's see where it goes. So I think it's just an exciting opportunity for builders who should be definitely paying attention.
And I think, to your point on consistency, that ties into really the need in the industry to have regenerative and sustainable systems of support for people that are building, right? Because at the end of the day, like some of the unfortunate realities that kind of, in my opinion, like plague the industry is how sometimes the incentives like are towards people getting short-term gain. Right? A lot of people don't look at grants as startup funding. They look at it as, this is the end goal. I'm going to get this grant, and then I'm going to jump to maybe I launch a project. Maybe I'm given a grant to launch on this chain. And then I'm going to, as soon as that grant runs out, if they don't give me another grant, I'm going to jump to another chain and get another grant. It's like you see a type of mercenary culture form when the incentives aren't well thought out. And that leads to like chain hopping. That leads to short-term things that don't actually have product market fit. You don't have a sustainable business model. You're not solving a real pain. You're just a builder, which right now in our world is a hot commodity. You go to a lot of these events, right? You go to like ETH Denver or other conferences, and it sometimes feels that there's more app chains than there are builders, right? Or like
more chains than builders.
More chains than builders, and you see it at a lot of the different levels. Like even at hackathons, like you start noticing career hackers like using the exact same project at one hackathon that they submit to another one. Like they don't actually want to build anything. They don't want to actually. We were talking about community earlier. Like they don't want to build something that they could open source and contribute to the rest of the ecosystem or that solves a problem. They want to come up with an idea to get a short amount of money very quickly to buy a car or something else. That's not inherently bad, but I think as an ecosystem overall, we need more of that regenerative side of things. We need more of that sustainable side of things built out.
But I'd say too that it's, we talk about this healthy, unhealthy kind of like thing, and I'm like, I tend to try to be mindful and not pass that kind of judgment in that way. It's just, that is the reality of the ecosystem, that if you want to sustain yourself, then this is a viable avenue. And so that to me says more that the incentives aren't aligned and structured properly. If other parties who are interested are being disappointed, if that makes sense. But I also think too, and this is something you mentioned, CryptoKitties, right? And I've been thinking about this a lot more recently because I felt a little bit of this energy coming back. Is that it's that optimism. You said being around an emerging technology, that optimism and that fire that's kind of around. And I remember when I first got into crypto, it seemed like the world was our oyster, right? We were going to fix everything on chain, right? And it's going to be incredible. And I feel like we've lost a little bit of that luster as time has gone on. But I feel that's starting to come back a little bit because things like user experience have improved, right? I think there was this kind of cognitive dissonance, right? Where if the user experience of the product wasn't good, I didn't feel good about telling my friends and family about it, right? I'd be like, here's this app. You're not going to have a great time, but whatever. But like these days, like you mentioned Disney Pinnacle, it's like I'm proud to say, hey, try this app, right? And I know that they're going to have a great experience, and it's a Web3 product. And that's such a good feeling to have. And I think that seed of kind of optimism and excitement about the future is going to I think, inspire a lot of people to really take big swings and shoot for the stars again. So that's why I feel like this energy, it's all kind of converging right now in a really fun and exciting way. So yeah, that's been my observation.
100%.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think as Matt mentioned, I think another key here, I think, is the distribution, right? So in terms of like building apps, I think in terms of like that positive feedback loop, money, grant, price, they are one thing. And another thing is that there are really people like using your app. So I think it's really, really important, and it's a really, really good feedback, positive feedback for these builders is that they are seeing real traffic, real users, and so I think that's what another, I think, key problem, and I think that like ecosystem really, these resources are very, very crucial in addition to like grants, price, anything. Yeah.
Yeah, I think what Cam was getting at is really the meat and butter for the talk, right? I think what incentivizes Hacker to continue is because it's so short term, to Ali's point, right? Like you can see the end goal, it's so tangible. You can almost feel that prize money being used by being squandered by you the next night when you're hacking. You don't feel that as a founder that often. Like sometimes you knew that's coming in 2 years. It takes a lot of time for the product to be so ready, right? For the UI UX to catch up, for you to be able to feel users using it. And it took us a long time to perfect our UI UX. And by the way, shameless plug, check out hackquest.io as well if you're a builder interested in joining the ecosystem. But we have really been improving the product days and nights, and a lot of it is to the product and the design, the dev team, and really the whole project as a whole. To constantly reflect, and this is something we've been doing a lot, and we share that with all our community teams as we do discovery call at least twice per week. Some are group calls with a lot of builders, some just one-to-one. We've been doing that ever since we started. At least 2 per week. It's not a lot, but I think it's more the consistency. We always talk to the users that way and try to reflect on it. And we see that's our way of getting that feedback, right? But if you don't have a proper structure in place, it's really hard for founders to get the positive feedback loop, right? To Cam's point, compared to hackers, because everyone, I think the industry as a whole gravitates towards the short-term gains, and which is okay. I think that's, some folks are more excited about short-term gains. Some folks would like to, more here for the long haul. But it's less on the players, I think, to Matt's point of view as well. I think it's more, how do we create a system and architecture and structure so folks who want to be founders are not, discouraged from building. We don't want to distract those people from focusing on our mission, and we still allow the hackers who want to, let's say, use hackathons to pay their bills to do their thing, right? I think one of the beauty of Web3 is the low cost of capital, right? Comparatively lower cost of capital compared to other industries, and that has helped a lot of folks from across the globe to change their lives. Winning one hackathon would mean 3 months of salary to a lot of people on parts of the world. So I don't judge those people for let's say, try to hop or make a career out of it. But in the meantime, thinking about how to push the boundaries of innovation, I don't want to discourage the founders from, keep building the product. So how do we design an ecosystem or structure that, provides adequate incentive for the latter as well? Because I think we have enough of the short-term incentive now. So let's focus on the long-term for now to encourage that. I think that's something we're trying to do as well.
100%. And to your point, like, I met someone here in Singapore at Token 2049 a couple days ago. He was just boothing, and he saw that I was wearing a Flow shirt, and he said, like, "Oh, you're with Flow?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I go with the Flow. Do you go with the Flow?" And he was like, "Hell yeah." And he was telling me how about a year ago or so, he participated in one of the Flow hackathons. And then he was like, I learned so much through that. Again, like hackathons, like since their inception have been a great vehicle across universities and computer science departments for short-term learning as much as possible. Like studying computer science in uni, I didn't know how to deploy like a React app. They don't teach you that. You fill out a function, you learn data structure algorithms. I only learned that through a hackathon, right? I didn't know how to like create a domain and set up a website with the domain. They don't teach that in comp sci. You learn that through hackathons or tinkering on your own, right?
Right.
And so he was telling me, like, you know what? I like winning a stream in one of your hackathons. That actually paid for several terms of my university. And not only that, like now I'm working on this huge infrastructure project in the space. And I do think that there's benefits. Like even if you're just going after that prize money, yes, you're still learning. Yes, it has tangible impact on your life. And like it does create a kind of feedback loop that supports the overall ecosystem, right?
Yeah.
No, I think that's awesome. In terms of taking a sidestep, you guys talk with a lot of hackers. You guys talk with a lot of builders. You guys talk with a lot of founders. What do you think is missing from your conversations with them?
That's a tough question.
That's a tough question.
Product question.
I think there's a lot of things, and we are pretty judgmental of the whole ecosystem from the angle of, I think coming from developer background or builder background, I think there's always room to do more.
Well, let's maybe get more specific.
Yeah.
Like, what do you hear from builders in regards to what do they want from their protocols? What do they want from their networks?
Yeah. I think this one's easier to answer.
Yep.
I think, I mean, to begin with, we talk about consistency. And we were at, so we help hosted a hackathon for this protocol called EDU Chain. It's a layer 3 built for education. And we hosted a hackathon. They have 4,672 hackers and 725 builds. I still remember because it's pretty amazing. And on the final demo day, it's a pretty intimate setting. And there's one thing that hackers said that really resonated with me, because this was also a new ecosystem that we helped support it. And he said, when I first joined the space and got onboarded from Web 2, I was very nervous and stressed. I didn't know what to do, and I heard about the concept of community, and also someone pushed me to over the nudge to do the hackathon, but I don't know. I never used Twitter before. I don't know if I'm gonna get validation or getting any support at all. But what pushed him in particular, this is a month-long hackathon, and he started building from day one, and he posted every single day, documenting the journey, and that's the type of builders we love. We want to, and he's continued to building. He actually got a small grant, and he's keep building, trying to raise some money as well, and a great project also. He was saying, I'll give a shout out as well. His project's called Streambill, and streambill.xyz, and he was saying, the community that was supporting just on Twitter every single day is amazing, and that mattered a lot to him. And that's something I've seen from other ecosystems as well. Some of the ecosystem I think do particularly well of spotlighting the hackers. Yeah. It doesn't even, in many cases, and from my point of view, it's not really, we call this emotional support or emotional value that's delivered to them versus pure monetary. Because sometimes for them, it's just every day you have a like, you have a comment, and let alone 10 comments, 10 likes. People Twitter DMs, just saying hi, sending a Calendly invite, saying, this is amazing, keep up the grind, you got this, my guy. I think things like that just actually push them forward, because a lot of the developers, not everyone work in groups, right? Like they need friends, they need communities. And I think for the ecosystems, I think it's on the ecosystem's job to really give them that vibe, give them the support, the emotional value, the emotional support to get there. I mean, this is a little bit abstract and not something every people talk about, but that was the immediate first thing that I thought of, because let's be frank, I think the ecosystems have come a long way, especially for some ecosystem like Flow, who have done, incredible job over the years supporting the builders. And I've seen other large ecosystem having grant program, having incubator, hackathon. All these are amazing, but I think by the end of the day, I think a lot of these ecosystems, I think, can do more on providing the emotional value, emotional support. having the high touch points to keep track of the consistency of the builders. That's why it was so exciting for me when I heard product like this or initiative like this you guys are building, and the reward incentive that you guys have in place, which I didn't know existed before, was because if you can really keep track of folks who are quietly building, because even hackathon or other type of activity, those are considered pretty high visibility, right? Not every hiker wants to attend those or even are used to attending those, maybe a little bit out of their comfort zone. But if you can consistently track them and then ensure they get the support they needed, emotional or monetary or else, they're definitely going to be more successful. I think the ecosystem will also benefit, not just for one ecosystem. I think the entire space will benefit from that. So that really excites me. Yeah.
Yeah, I think one thing I want to add is that, in addition to monetary support, they want that from the ecosystem for sure, and emotional support as well. And I think one thing I mentioned before is distribution. So I think it would be very helpful if they could get, of course, I'm talking about like legit apps, legit builders, these projects with good user experience. And I think it would be good if ecosystem could help them to get a wider distribution and help people, like let people try these apps out. And I think that's one thing I think a lot of like ecosystem like trying to do, but I think Flow has a large number of people who could like participate, who could like try these apps out. So I think that would be very helpful.
I love what you guys are saying, and it kind of fits into the larger theme of what we were talking about from the beginning of community sharing resources. There's a give and take aspect, and I think one of the most underutilized tools in the space is Twitter, and that might come as a surprise. It's like, what? No, crypto Twitter is huge, like everyone's on Twitter, but I think disproportionately as builders, we tend to shy away from building in public and sharing what we're working on, and we like to sleuth a lot more. Like, oh, what did Vitalik just do? What song did he just sing at this event? Like, I'm going to like send a meme to that, or I'm not even going to engage. We're consuming more, and if you think of like genuine community as being sharing resources, give and take, like a lot of us on Twitter, we're just consuming. One thing that we could unlock by sharing more or giving, by building in public, by talking about what we're doing, is we could get invaluable product insights like you guys are talking about from the community. We could get more visibility, we could get more support, we can build things that solve real pains instead of being tunnel visioned and getting an idea in our head that this is a big problem to be solved, I'm gonna launch it, I push the code on GitHub, why isn't anyone like coming to my app, what's going on, right? Yeah. It's a way to hack the distribution, it's a way to improve the product you're building, and it's a way to foster better community on Twitter, on crypto Twitter overall. So I guess that's one piece of advice like I always encourage like builders in the space to do. Like, I know it's painful to make your first tweet. I know it might feel, not genuine. I know you might feel like, oh, I don't want exposure. What I put online is going to be there forever. But at the end of the day, just think of it like a community. Think of it like you're giving and taking, and you will see massive amounts of good things come from it.
To be fair, one of my first interactions with Flow, I think, was a like on Twitter or like seeing them on a space.
Absolutely.
It feels so good.
I remember being like, this blockchain has a Twitter? Like, that's crazy. But that's been one of the cool experiences as someone who's now kind of getting a look behind the curtain of the Flow blockchain Twitter is like how cool it is to be able to highlight the builders who are making a choice to build in public and show off little things. I mean, something as simple as like, hey, we're deploying on testnet. Here's a screenshot. Like, getting to highlight that and give them a platform is so exciting. And I know, like, as someone who has created things myself, like that feels so good. Like, so I don't want to downplay it and be like, this emotional support that you're talking about, but it has real value, like this kind of intangible value. Because and it's so many times I talk to builders, and you say, "What do you want? What do you want from this, that, and the other?" Like, and of course, it's all the typical trappings, but then there ends up being this intangible thing of like, yeah, I just want to be like recognized, for what I'm building, and I think that's so important. So I love that we get to do that. That's awesome.
Yeah. I totally echo that point because like a lot of our builders, like especially in China. So they don't actually use Twitter as their social media, and so most of the builders don't have a Twitter account. So but in some of our like profiles, we ask them to have a Twitter account, and you can see a lot of like new Twitter accounts. It's almost like a bot, and it has a
No followers, no
they just
profile
name
picture.
themselves Hackquest and their name, and they even use our logo as their profile picture.
As
you
our
can-
first advocate, he used our Hackquest logo as their Twitter profile.
You can always see those
That's
like
so
bots. Like it's not a bot. They are just like real people, real
They're legit,
builders.
in case you're wondering.
Yeah.
This is Twitter.
So at first they just retweet our Twitter, like retweet our
And then
tweets,
you see the logo, you're like, am I retweeting
yeah,
myself?
retweet everything we twist about, and then you can see that slowly they are starting to like show their own product, and then like you can see them that started to like follow other like crypto like people and projects, famous projects, and it's really helpful that they slowly get into the space and like as you mentioned, building public like culture, I think, and they just get these like as I mentioned, positive feedback loop. I remember a builder got really excited when one of the head of dev reel of one ecosystem we work with clicked liked his post, and he just screenshot it and sent it in our group chat group chat and said, "Wow, that's amazing! Even this person really he likes my post. That's amazing. I'm just I don't even have less than 10 followers right now, and they click likes my post." So I think
It reminds me of writing. It's like a lot of people when they first start writing, like they don't develop their author's voice in the beginning, and they kind of copy other people's styles. But over time, they start
Definitely.
developing their own like voice.
That's such a good analogy.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
I think one thing we wanted to comment on is, and this is a call to action to some extent. I know we're planning more to go, but I think in some geographical areas, people feel a little bit shy to express themselves, and I think China is one good example. I think Singapore, a lot of countries in the region, I think, have that more reserved culture compared to the West. And but really, I think the building public, and this is something I think I almost make another analogy. Is also related to writing. It's writing diary. Right, we're seeing a lot of the builders, developers almost treating it. I want to ask them, you're a pretty shy person. What made you decide to actually document your journey? It was like, oh, I just thought of it as writing a diary to myself. I don't care how many people follow me but trust me, they get so excited. I think Cam's example was so spot on. They're gonna dedicate their project to this blockchain forever. They're gonna love this project, this blockchain to the rest of their life, just because one person who was pretty important to the ecosystem liked or made a comment. It sometimes just take as simple as that. But anyway, coming back to it, they treat it as writing a diary. They keep track of it. I think in some other regions like India, I like to highlight and shout out to all the builders there. They have this culture. It's natural for them to document this journey, and then it's almost ingrained in their culture to do so. And then they would keep track of every step of the way. Oh, it's 100 days of coding, 100 days of Solidity, right? 14 days of learning flow, and gradually, sometimes, and I've talked to a lot of head of DevRels and ecosystems and founders who treat this as noise. To be frank, from me, I don't, and I feel like a lot of the community folks may disagree or agree. I think as long as they're learning, they are documenting their journey, they're sharing to the public, they're building in the public, they're learning with you. I think that's a positive signal. Of course, if they're actually continuing to build afterwards, or they give you more feedback, they stick to a protocol that's good. But I think in general, it's good for the ecosystem or good for the for the space to keep learning and building in public, just in the corner of Stoneway, and in the cornerstone of it, and adding on the open source nature of the ecosystem of the space, it just naturally make you want to learn more, want to share more. It creates this positive feedback loop that makes you continue to build more, to learn more, to form your own writing style, to form your building style, your sharing style, and eventually become a KOL, maybe in a space. Someone like Nader, like Austin, like Patrick, and who influence thousands and millions of others to do the same. I think if we can really make that feedback and make that flow really well, starting at the ecosystem level, which I think we're starting to see, and hopefully with all the releases and initiatives, it will get even better and better. I think that gives us that glimpse of hope for the ecosystem and for the developer landscape, and that's what pushes us to work hard and grind every day.
100%, very well said. And I think like it does come down to meeting people where they're at. Like you guys were talking about earlier, like the hackers that are like less predisposed to talking about what they're doing, they're building, maybe they're a little more introverted. Like how do you meritocratically find them and meet them where they're at and support them as they build something that makes a real difference, while also encouraging people to like, you know, get out there and share more and foster a more genuine sense of community. Like
Right.
both those two sides, it's something exciting to build out. I was very curious, going back to communities, what has been the strongest or most exciting community you guys have personally seen? And what kind of elements do you think contributed to that project or ecosystem or community success?
I got one.
Yeah,
I can
go ahead.
start. There's one community I really liked called Build Space.
Build space, yes.
I don't know. I think a lot of folks. Shout out to Farza,
Farza.
who hasn't replied to my DM.
We're leaving that in.
Yeah. But anyways, it's really unfortunate that Build Space recently actually decided to shut down. But I thought of, because we started around the same time that Build Space started, actually. So our community back then, we always treated them as a really good learning example, because Farza is a serial founder and he knows how to gather people together, and we just saw that small group of, they started as a Web3 kind of learning kind of platform too, and then we started as a founder community, so we almost went backward, and but towards the end is all very similar in the sense that you start with a community, you make it very supported. So one thing I think is very prime example of it is, if you take a look at every person, anybody's post within the Build Space ecosystem, you always find someone who commented, and it will say, "Oh, I checked out your project," because there were several ways I think Build Space as a platform and ecosystem did really well that we learned, and I'm sure a lot of ecosystem are also learning. Is they create this one-liner of description of their project. They mirror the project. You know, it's very simple. It's very elegant. Very demure, very mindful, and they designed the process to be so simple to capture, and they drive traffic to spotlight that builder, and then so they would check out each other's project and then give feedback, and they say, and because it's so simple, it takes them less than a minute to check out. It takes 15 seconds to write a tweet. It's so simple, but sometimes somebody on the other side of the table, when they see that comment, that like coming from someone like Farza or like any other builder in the space, they get so excited. They want to continue building. They want to contribute. And I'm seeing so many full-time builders who are very well known in their space, actually. They sign up to join the nights and weekends at Build Space. They fly over to San Francisco, to Dubai in person, and to contribute. I personally love the Build Space ecosystem. I think we aspire to make Hackquest one of that destination for the Web3 builders and founders, and hopefully other folks. And as well, I think Build Space is a really good example of capturing that level of energy and support.
Definitely.
Perfect.
Okay, for me, I think I think Build Space, I love Build Space as well.
Yeah.
And I think one immediate community I can think of is a technical community called Rust CC. So I think it's a very decentralized community centered around the Rust technology. So like it's almost like Rust is like they write a book called Rust Bible, and they almost treat Rust as like as their Bible. So it's that Rust is the best programming language in the world instead of PHP. and then so it's very spontaneous community. And people do genuinely help each other when they have difficulty learning Rust, because Rust is very difficult to learn at first. So, and I think that is one example I can think of.
I'd be curious, since we're probably coming to a close time wise. You guys, we're talking about feedback loop, right? We talk about community. Yeah, I imagine that you both talk to a lot of builders all the time. I imagine you have a kind of a keen insight into what are some of the things that people are excited to build right now. We're in a space of metas. It's always what is the meta, but what are you seeing as kind of the next thing? What is emerging? What are people kind of excited to build? Go to Harry first.
Sure, I can kick us off. Consumer. I think anything that brings consumers on chain, and the reason why, and I think we're a little bit biased here because we've been talking to so many builders in the space, and one thing what you also mentioned about what are something people didn't like, or I think we're seeing a lot of also new infras or new protocols emerge that got a ton of value, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think we have seen that. I think Union Square Ventures in 2019 authored this framework called the Infra Adapt Cycle, right? I think it talks about how the infra encourages dApps, the dApps encourages the infra. Well, it doesn't have to be dApps, but apps too. And it's definitely helping we'll continue to progress. So there's nothing wrong with having better and better infra. But we haven't seen the apps actually catch on. I think obviously we see the CryptoKitties, the NBA Top Shots, really the Step-ins of the world. I think there's a lot of projects that really been, I think at the beginning of well, I wouldn't say beginning, but the earlier stage of the crypto space, I think we saw a lot more consumer dApps really on board the mess and go beyond just the natives. We will love to see more consumer-facing dApps that truly on board the next millions, and I think everyone is kind of chasing it, and every ecosystem looking for them, and I think it might be a really good signal, but I think we are definitely seeing more consumer dApps and coming from it, partly because the ecosystem are looking for them. They're hosting consumer, instead of doing an infra hackathon, now they're doing consumer hackathon. Instead of giving grants to infra projects, now there's nothing wrong with infra, but like we want to have the apps too, right? So I think that's a positive signal from my end, and I'm seeing more consumer projects, more and more, whether it's on the social end, on the gaming end, on
RWA.
Yeah, RWA, huge. That are really consumer facing, and I think that's really gonna change the space and on board help us reach that mass adoption.
I mean, the one of the taglines for the Flow World Tour is "Build the next killer app." I mean, and I mean because Flow is ready. You know, we had Deet. You mentioned Deet, the creator of ERC 721 and NFTs as we know it. Recently, in a Flow meeting, was saying, "Hey, you know, Flow is ready. It's taken 4 years to get here, but Flow is ready." Like, that is not, I don't think he said it lightly, and it truly is. Like, our developer experience, the user experience is ready. If you want to build the next killer app, you should not be afraid or be encumbered by technical constraints. You know, you have to be worried that your blockchain can't scale for your app, right? It's like, or you have to hobble together some kind of infra to like make it work. It's like, it will work, and it's ready. So that's very cool. So exciting to hear that is a theme that you're seeing from builders too, that they're thinking about that as well as really it's time. You know, and they should be. But Cameron, what are you seeing?
I really want to find a different answer just to sound different, but nice. I have to second that. I think consumer is one thing that we really need right now. It's just that I think one question we got and asked a lot is like, when can Web3 get into mass adoption? And right now we're just seeing that there are not enough people, like new people, coming in to our circle, and we really need consumer app, killer app to do that. And I just think, I'm pretty biased. I think we have enough infras right now. And I think it's time that we really have some good apps that has very good user experience that can really solve problems and to bring people in, whether it's gaming or social. Yeah,
we're definitely seeing that trend. Yeah, it's definitely more people building consumer apps. And I actually disagree slightly from Cameron. I do think having better and more infra is good.
Of course, yeah. Disclaimer.
But I actually do think having better and more infra is good. It's just I think that traditionally the value accrual has been too skewed towards the infra, and now we're seeing the ecosystems like Flow emphasizing on, because the infra now is ready. for the consumer dApp. So now it's the perfect timing to build. And then the hacker responses are, I think, are highlighting that.
I think I'm quite biased because like I'm talking to a lot of hackers. Like I would say like hackers, normal hackers, and I think the time has passed for these hackers to have like an infra level kind of projects and get really successful because like you really need a fancy team and then a fancy capital, fancy VC to back you up in order to get a new kind of infra level thing. But it's very, very difficult for normal builders to have these resources.
Well, I think recently, and this was kind of a joke, but I think there was a truism to it. We've started to see some kind of killer apps start to break out a little bit. You know, we've seen things like prediction markets and things like that. And people joked about how these killer apps had more TVL than the protocols they were on, right? And so it's like, it can be great. It can be discouraging as a builder to see other people raising, you know, for infra that's a little more niche and be like, well, my app is good. You know, why can't I do something like that? But I think the tide is changing that direction. And so we're excited to empower it. Now, Ali, I'm excited to, I don't want to leave you out of this too, because I feel like you've probably seen some good themes in meta. So what are you seeing?
What I'm seeing, I'll approach it from a different angle. What I'm seeing is a need to do what like startups have been doing in Web 2 for a lot of time. And I know I'm going to probably get a little backlash at that because like we tend to be pretty tribal in Web 3, but I remember when I was doing my very first Web 2 startup, there was a couple of things that I was told that I took for granted. One of them was all my mentors would tell me, do customer discovery interviews, really understand the customers and what pains they're facing before you start building anything. And I wanted to just jump right into programming. I had an idea in the back of my mind about what, like a problem that could be solved by it. And I remember thinking to these mentors, well, if Ford listened to what his customers wanted, he would have built a faster horse instead of a 0-to-1 car. And like, I had a lot of ego when I was like in my early 20s and like in university and going down the Web 2 startup route. And, you know, I went through these like big accelerator programs like Techstars, and that messaging kept on coming again and again. And then when that startup ended up getting launched and no users were there, that was a huge hit to the ego. And then I was like, what happened? And I realized all the problems to adoption for my startup was because I didn't take that advice from the very beginning. I didn't even talk to a single user. Like I spent months, like these accelerators, like that's really cool. Like ended up building something and putting a lot of effort into it. But you know, it wasn't solving a problem that people were willing to pay for. And so after that, I was like, I'm only going to really think about what pain I'm solving when I start that. And I think we need to see that more among builders in Web3.
Right. Yep.
The second part about consumer apps is, it's another lesson that I learned from doing a Web 2 startup, is when I was starting out, I really overemphasized the features of my application, right? The technical features. And the feedback I kept on getting from these world-class founders was like, don't talk about the features, talk about like the value propositions and like the why and what's being solved. And what you see a lot of times, I mean, I don't mean to make a sweeping generalization, but like as an engineer, you launch the project, you're in love with the features, you're in love with the tech. It's like, oh my God, this is 40% faster. We're using like MongoDB that allows this. It's like, no, what pain are you solving for the end user?
Right.
That's what I'm excited about. A lot of the times that pain goes beyond the technology. The technology in a lot of ways and times needs to be abstracted away, and the value propositions need to be emphasized. And I think that's how you unlock a lot of like mainstream consumers, and that's how you build more consumer-centric apps, by making that transition from a product lens towards I'm focusing on the technical details and I'm kind of shilling those to I'm focusing on creating genuine community. I'm focusing on product market fit, solving a real pain that people are facing. And a good analogy I would give is a lot of people say like when Web3, you were saying earlier in the call, we have tons of these, you know, like people coming in, but when is the next killer app coming in? When are we going to start onboarding more developers, etc.? If you look at a different vertical, we're all in tech, but if you look at artificial intelligence, it's been like around for decades, right? Yep. Like one of our coworkers wrote one of like the first papers on LLMs like over a decade ago, right? And it never so when ChatGPT got launched, it was the fastest onboarded tool in history.
Yep.
Why was that? Why was AI around for so long, but only now people started using it? It's because people created a product that was consumer-centric, that leveraged that technology. It abstracted away the technicalities. You talk to anyone before ChatGPT came out about AI, the average person would go like, that's complicated. Is that what, Terminator? Is that Skynet? What is that, right?
Yeah.
And then post that, it's like now it's become a lot more accepted because you had a consumer-centric application that your grandmother could use to get a recipe. You know, your brother could use to help build a video game. You know, you could use to like tutor yourself in college and ask it to quiz you before an exam, right? So the whole reason I bring up that analogy is like when we think about Web3 applications, if we change our paradigm to think about the value, to think about a consumer-centric mindset, I think that could really usher forth the next killer app. That could bring in the next million users and solve real pains for a huge amount of our planet. So
I can't agree more.
That's what I would comment on there.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. That's wonderful insight. I think we've gotten used to kind of plumbing in public, if you will, just seeing it all exposed, and you just kind of get used to that. But then you show it to somebody who's never experienced it before, and it is shocking to them. Like, what is this? You mentioned even something as simple as Connect Wallet, right? So wonderful insight. I think we'll probably wrap it up here, but thank you so much to both of you guys at Hackquest. We're super excited about what you all are doing, what you've been doing, and what you're going to do from here. And we're here, Singapore, on the terrace. We're heading into the ETH Global Hackathon, and it feels like the stars are aligning. Maybe it always feels that way, but it feels extra that way today. So I'm excited for what comes in the future. So thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
One thing I want to just super interject very
go for
fast.
it.
The very end is time for me to shamelessly shill. The rewards platform we were talking about. Whether you're a developer or user, you can start taking advantage of it right now and getting involved. All you have to do is go to, I believe, rewards.flow.com, and as a user, you can start locking in your flow to get really impressive APY yields. And then coming up very soon, you'll be able to interact with a plethora of consumer applications. Interacting with those will create a lot of opportunities and give you a lot of perks. Again, just kind of giving you the earliest alpha. Like if you didn't hear it already, you heard it here first. If you're a developer, if you're participating in these hackathons with the world tour we're starting off in Singapore, focusing on DeFi. We'll be going to Thailand and San Francisco, exploring different themes such as gaming, sports, like the gig economy. If you're contributing to these hackathons, whether in person or online, or you're doing a side project on GitHub in the Flow ecosystem right now, what you're working on today, there's going to be rewards tied into those. So just wanted to give a heads up that getting involved right now, you're going to see a lot of exciting things come out of it, a lot of support, a lot of perks, and don't want to give too much alpha, but I'll just say when Lambo. That's all I'm going to say.
That's
Enough
awesome.
said.
There it is. Enough said. Well, wonderful. Thank you all for joining us today, and catch us next time on the Builder Podcast.
Cheers.
Cheers.